What is it with Ari Aster and head trauma? Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. Today I'm going to be ranking all three of Ari Aster's films as part of my director Rankography series. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, ranked lists, and trailer reactions. So what is a Rankography exactly? Well, it's my ranking of a filmography, whether that be a director's output, an actor's appearances, or even an entire franchise. My Rankographies are based on personal preference, and I rank movies according to how much I enjoyed them, rather than any specific technical merit or attribute. Remember, this is just my ranking, not the ranking, so be sure to post your own personal ranking of Ari Aster's movies in the comments below. There were a few horror directors that came on the scene around the same time in the late 2010s, and even though their films have all been quite different, their basic release schedule has remained about the same, which has kept them linked in my mind. One of these directors has taken a largely crowd-pleasing approach, while another went the esoteric artsy route right from the start. But Ari Aster has created an interesting niche for himself that's situated somewhere in the middle of those two extremes. There has been a clear trajectory of escalating art house-inspired self-indulgence with each of his new releases, but Aster settled in nicely into grief-driven psychological horror drama, with a lot of focus on metaphors and underlying themes. This approach has largely worked for me, but there is one definite exception. I've already reviewed all three of these movies on this channel, so if you want to check those out for some more in-depth thoughts on each of them, I'll put links in the description below, and also link them up in the cards as we go along. Alright, let's get this rankography started. Coming in at number 3, Beau Is Afraid. There is no question about the placement of this one for me, since it's the only film in Ari Aster's filmography that I dislike. Now, it's not uncommon for me to have films that I don't really enjoy by directors that I do like, but this one was definitely an unpleasant surprise for me, and a huge step down from his two previous films. Given how out there those other two movies are, I went into this film with a very open mind, and essentially no plot-based expectations. I didn't even watch the trailer beforehand. All I knew was that this was a slight departure from his usual horror focus, so I went in expecting weird. I went in expecting lots of metaphors and underlying themes, but what I got was an overlong and somehow boring exercise in self-indulgence. This is an incredibly chaotic and stressful movie. It's also a movie where the plot is secondary. In fact, it's probably actually tertiary here. The film is much more interested in invoking feelings than it is about focusing on plot. And that sort of works during the first act, as we meet Beau and begin to see his life, or at least his life as he views it. It's over the top and wild, but it's in line with the heavy-handed messages about anxiety and mother-son relationships and trauma-based gaslighting, but things just get random and weird for the sake of being random and weird. The story devolves into a self-indulgent and unevenly paced mishmash of ideas that seem designed solely to make people use phrases like Kafkaesque and Freudian when discussing the film. At least Joaquin Phoenix's performance was really good. Coming in at number 2, Midsommar. This may only be in the number 2 spot, but I like Midsommar quite a bit, and there's a huge gap between number 2 and 3 for me. Even though this film is also a little overlong and trends towards self-indulgence at times, it still focuses on telling an interesting and coherent story. It certainly gets weird, and there's a lot of what I would call art house padding that wasn't necessary for telling the story, but it still worked as a cohesive whole. The story itself was a fairly simple folk horror tale, one that was reminiscent of quite a few other genre staples, but it worked not only because of the mystery horror approach, but also because of its characters and themes. In this film, the underlying themes were a bonus to the story. Taking the time to analyze the symbolic meaning behind what Midsommar represents to this community, or the metaphors surrounding the toxic, crumbling relationship at the center of the story, enhances the film, but isn't a requirement to enjoying or understanding it. It's a movie that exists at different levels, and can be appreciated at those different levels. Florence Pugh gives a riveting and frequently anguish-filled performance as Dani, which makes her both an endearing lead as well as a source of discomfort throughout the already uncomfortable movie. Despite the discomfort and horror of the themes and events depicted in this film, this is easily Ari Aster's most cinematic and vibrant movie so far, being equal parts beautiful and disturbing. So that means my number one Ari Aster film is Hereditary. Even though this is still a very out there type of indie horror film, this is the most accessible movie that Aster has made to date. The simplest way to classify this film is as a horror, and the third act certainly leans into that more heavily, but for much of the runtime, this is more of a darkly tragic family drama than anything else. It's an emotionally draining experience, and if all it was just grief-filled family drama, then it'd probably be a little too much. But this has got a very interestingly crafted story to it too. There's a bit of mystery, and some incredibly shocking and unexpected turns that end up making this a much more gripping and wild ride than you might expect. Like all of Aster's films, there's a lot here that you can unpack in terms of themes and meanings, but as was the case with Midsommar, and decidedly not the case with Beau Is Afraid, it's not a requirement for understanding the movie. It's just a bonus that enhances the story, if you so choose. Given how grief-filled and grief-fueled the story is, it probably comes as no surprise that it sports some intense performances, especially from Toni Collette, who I think deserved a lot more recognition than she got. None of Aster's films are what could be considered easy watches, nor are any of them crowd-pleasing or fun horror movies, but this is the one film in his filmography that I often find myself wanting to rewatch purely for enjoyment. Alright, so that's my rankography of Ari Aster's filmography. 3 movies, 1 disappointment, and more metaphors than most filmmakers use in a lifetime. What does your ranking look like? I'd love to see some reasoning for your order, so be sure to post it in the comments below. Remember, I've already reviewed all 3 of these movies, so you could check those videos out if you want some more in-depth discussion of each, as well as my ratings, pros and cons, and even tailored film recommendations. And if you're interested in buying any of these movies, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this rankography, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe if you're at it to see more videos like this, as well as movie reviews. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainely Movies. The way life should be.